Yeah, we will be taking our first bite on the topic, which is on economic reforms and the impact on poor citizens. So, of course, a review of IMF criticism amidst the World Poverty Day, which is tomorrow, the 17th of October. And, of course, joining me is Reverend David Ogola, the Executive Director of ANEJ. Good to have you join. Good morning. ANEJ, what does it stand for?
It's African Network for Environment and Economic Justice.
Okay, now let's look at the aspect of our economic reforms. I don't know what your thoughts are like anyways, but we see the positives that even we also read out on the pages of the newspaper, and of course we are yet to see it reflecting on the Nigerian population. What are your thoughts? Do you see a good page on the economic reforms translating positively the lives of Nigerians?
Again, thank you for inviting me to prepare for the World Poverty Day tomorrow. And against this World Poverty Day that provides opportunity for the international community, countries, communities to reflect on how to address the issue of poverty. As you know, millions of Nigerians, according to the statistics, about over 103 million Nigerians are poor, multidimensionally, and it's not just about income. And so when you put that against the economic reform the federal government is embarking upon, you will see the relevance. And one key policy that this present government has taken up is the issue of removal of oil subsidy. And all over the world, when government embark on economic reform, there are those who are disadvantaged, and there are those who suffer it, there are those who face the consequence. But government try to put in policy to ensure that those who suffer from such economic reform find some kind of amelioration to support them to be able to overcome the consequence of such reform. And in the case of Nigerian government at national level has put in place like social protection policy by providing cash transfer for the very poor of the poorest, and government have also looked into other different strategy to address the consequence of the reform. Now, but against the background of the high level of poverty, that is because people are losing livelihood and there's lack of job, the unemployment level is increasing. And so when you see all those social implication of this policy government embarked upon, then you begin to appreciate the fact that tomorrow provides an opportunity to reflect what are the policy government have adopted to address this problem is working. And so hopefully you will see testimony from people, because it's not about we said or they said. You know, we will be shifting the narrative about the people testimony. When you go down the street, when you interview people, what do the people feel about the government economic policy? You, the media, you have more information about it, but just reflecting quickly, you will see that quite a number of people are not really happy. You know, the question is that what is government doing and how government is carrying out this policy? There are things we must begin to interrogate. But as we go on, let's see what are the real reality, because sometimes too people sit down in their comfort chair just to raise criticism. But do you know what the problem is, and do you know whether government is capable to address the problem? Because the problem of poverty in Nigeria is not what government alone can address. And sometimes when we mention government, people fail to realize there are three types of government. And if you focus in the national newspaper, just taking a scan of the front page newspaper this morning, you'll find out that over 80% of the press coverage, both print and even the TV, are focusing on the federal government. But we have 36 states in Nigeria, and we have over 700 local government in Nigeria. And the resources we are talking about to support attacking poverty in Nigeria are shared among these three types of government. Now, what is the state governments doing? What is the local government doing to tackle this problem? I think that's a real key message, that The local government, the community, the traditional rulers, the religious leaders, the NGOs, the civil society, they all have got a role to play to tackle this multi-dimensional poverty. And so that brings me to the role some key policy of government is playing in addressing this problem. And majorly is the issue of social protection. And if you look at the federal government social protection program, which most state government have keyed into, even Edo state government, they have designed some kind of social protection policy. But translating the policy to practical impact on the people is the real challenge. And that's where it brings me to the political will. And that's the whole key message that will be happening tomorrow. And I'm happy that one of the ways we are contributing to this conversation is providing a space for conversation. How do we address this problem? Because poverty is a threat to investment, is a threat to stability, and a situation where you don't have stable environment, it is difficult for you to talk about investment. And this really you will see as a classical example in the Niger Delta region because of the high level of poverty and the absence of job. The unemployment is increasing and economic growth is not moving in tandem to tackle the problem of poverty in the country, and this is a real challenge. And so moving forward is to see what are the steps government need to take to address this problem. And I'm happy that the last time the Nigerian government participated in the global conference on finance for development, the whole issue of domestic resource mobilization came up very strongly. How do we mobilize sufficient resources to finance sustainable development in the country, either at the state level or the local government level or at the federal government level? But even thinking about that, the issue of transparency and accountability, for people to be able to manage the little resources for the common good of the people will also be a common message. That's why this year World Poverty Day theme talks about family. How do we address the problem of family? Because at the family level, if you don't address the poverty level, it will impact the national level. And that's why I am very happy that at the global level they are focusing on the socioeconomic impact of poverty at the family level.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You said a lot. Yes. You said a lot, and you also spoke about the social protection, to ameliorate the plights of Nigerians. And of course, you recognize the fact that a huge Nigerian population, are really in the poverty line or even below poverty line. And you also spoke about the policies of government that you were saying that basically is being miscued or skewed as the fact that everything that has to do with the negative vibes is coming from the federal government without, also looking at the sub-national governments. We have 3 tiers of government, but do you realize, or do you?
No, I didn't. I'm only saying that government policy need to be put in perspective in relation to the economic reforms they carry out. And in addressing those government policies,
yes, my question.
We have to look the best practice that can help government to achieve their goal.
Yes, my question. Yes. You basically was also talking about like the social protection, to ameliorate the plights of Nigerians.
Yes.
Again, let's look at what we even saw on the pages of the papers today about the price of fuel.
Yes.
And then you were here in Nigeria. I don't think you were out of the country. You were here in Nigeria when the president suspended fuel subsidy. And of course, you were also here when we started having it tough, where, skyrocketing prices of goods became the order of the day, commodities in the market. Now, do you see a touch of affection by this government in that aspect of removing fuel subsidy, without looking at the aspect of ameliorating the price of Nigeria?
It's not about whether government have a touch. The reality is that we are not in a command economy where government decides everything. It's a market-based economy.
But the aspect of removing fuel subsidy,
yes,
it was a major shock to the economy.
No,
you agree?
The government have no option. That's the reality. The reality is that when you practice, you put in place a market approach framework, you allow market determine the price. I think the real challenge is that the gain from such policy, who benefits from it?
Exactly.
I think that's the real problem. You see, if you increase price of oil and the tax government collects increases, and that has led to more resources going to the state and local government. What has happened is that the benefit that is coming out of the removal of oil subsidy has increased resources going to the states and the local government across Nigeria. And I have not heard from any state governor who have said, no, we are not benefiting for this policy. But what has happened is that the more resources go to state governments across the country and local government, the less development is happening at that tier of government. And you can easily link this to the poor performance of the opposition leaders in those states and the poor performance of civil society in those states, because you see, for you to have a value of a democratic society, there must be a kind of an accountability culture that has to be put in place.
Okay.
But a situation where you have the entire stakeholder lining up in one particular part of the ecosystem, you are not going to have an accountability mechanism. And so what has happened in Nigeria is that people are now fixated on the removal of oil subsidy. Is it a wrong policy? It's not a wrong policy if the benefit is shared in a transparent and accountable way.
But probably the approach.
Yes. So no,
probably the approach was wrong.
No,
there's nothing wrong in removing the subsidy
at all.
But were the people ready for it?
No, it's not about the people ready for it. Look, we're in a democratic society. Tinubu contested election and he won, and he became a president of Nigeria. He's the president of Nigeria, and this is his own agenda on how he wants to solve under the APC government. If you disagree with him, you wait for 2027 to contest election and remove him and say you have a better policy. So while Tinubu is still Nigerian president, all option that we have is to begin to see the policy he has put in place and see who is benefiting. See, look, we are not in a military regime. We are in a democratic society. And look, one election has been held and somebody has been declared, we have responsibility to accept that result. And if you feel contrary to that view, you have the option of going to court. This is my own view.
Okay.
And then once a policy is put in place, Tinubu has a policy on how to address the problem of Nigeria by removing the oil subsidy. So in removing the oil subsidy, some part of Nigerians were disadvantaged because they face the consequence of that economic reform agenda. But I'm saying to you, as somebody who has been working on these issues for the past 30 years, that the benefit of removing the oil subsidy has increased resources to the states. It has increased resources to the local government. The problem we have in Nigeria is that as resources is increasing to the state, there's less development.
Exactly, because it's not just to increase the resources, but how is it transforming the lives of the people? That is not. And to ask you that question, you remember I said, yes. Are the people ready for it? By that I mean, yes. Is the economy, ready to receive that shock? Because one thing that it throws at is, if the economy is not buoyant, and then what the people get, the average Nigerian gets at the end of the day, is not able to, take him through, and then you remove such a subsidy, the impact will be colossal.
So our own, that's why I said that's the weakness of the environment we operate.
Okay.
So the weakness, so that our responsibility as civil society and media is to unpack this issue so that we begin to solve the problem.
Okay. You spoke about subnational government.
Yes.
As having more allocations.
Yes, exactly. So
now, how do you see the aspect of the culture of impunity?
No,
most especially as we look at impunity for corruption, for instance.
Can we be clear about this whole issue? Removal of oil subsidy is not a wrong thing. The increase of the price is not a wrong thing, because they are responding to market forces.
Yeah, but we're trying to trap the funds. We're trying to trap the allocations.
Hello, we are not in a command economy. We are in a market approach economy, and in a market approach, it is demand and supply that determines the price. And once the price, there is a benefit for government by the taxes they collect. I am saying that the removal of oil subsidy has led to the increase of revenue flowing to the common purse.
Exactly. And the people are saying, how does it translate to the benefits?
Then the money that is coming to the state and the local government has increased. But unfortunately, I said, the more the resources is increasing in the state and local government, less development. What it means is that there is the transparency and accountability around public finance is decreasing.
Okay, how do you assess the administration of the president in this regard, in terms of culture for impunity?
Yes,
because it's one thing for us to have increasing allocation, it's another for us to make sure that there is no diversion of funds or misappropriation of funds, and to make sure that the projects and development gets to the people. As at Wendy.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you now, that we do have responsibility. If we don't, you see, President Tinubu is at the federal government level, at the state level, at the local government level. Stakeholders have responsibility to hold state government and local government accountable, and by a way of different kind of approach. And the benefit of removal of oil subsidy has increased the resources going to the state, and the state governor has responsibility to begin to put those resources into health, education, into infrastructure that will impact on the life of the people.
Thank you. To wrap up, you agree with me that the positive impact, the people are not feeling it as we speak?
The people have responsibility to begin to mobilize. You cannot.
I asked you a question
that you don't work for.
Do you see the Nigerian population being affected positively by the economic reforms under President
Oh my God, everywhere around the world, everywhere there is an economic reform, people suffer, and the only way to address that suffering is ensuring transparency and accountability, and the people must be mobilized. And our responsibility as civil society is to mobilize the people. It can even lead to change of government, because you have to contest policy options. If people feel that Tinubu administration is not putting in the right policy, I will just encourage them to use that as a basis for mobilization. By the year 2027, it becomes a big issue, and that's one of the things we are canvassing. And that poverty will become a major political agenda for 2027 election, because the victims, the poor in Nigeria, is increasing. As we speak today, over 133 million Nigerians are poor. And the only problem that these poor, they are not well organized.
All right, thank you very much, Reverend David
Ogoro. Mobilization.
Thank you very much.
Is to mobilize this group of people, so that by 2027 they become a force.
Thank you very much, Reverend David Ogolo, and I wish you a beautiful outing ahead of tomorrow, World Poverty Day, and basically looking at the efforts by the civil society groups to make sure that they're able to close the gap in order to look at the reforms of the economy, and of course how that can mitigate this.